Shane Murphy here, entrepreneur and restaurant marketing expert. Welcome to the Restaurant Rocket Fuel podcast, where we discuss marketing strategies that leading restaurateurs are using to grow and expand their restaurants. This podcast is sponsored by Boostly, the text marketing company that works with every point of sale and online ordering vendor in the industry. No contracts, no monthly fees. Learn more at boostly.com. Welcome back, everybody. Today, we are joined by Chip Klose. He is a restaurant coach who runs the P3 Mastermind Group and the Restaurant Strategy Podcast. He has an amazing book on restaurant marketing that we'll probably talk about later today as well. And he's just coached a ton of successful restaurants on operations and marketing strategy to help them improve profitability and to grow like crazy. Chip, thank you for joining us today. I've been super excited for a while for this conversation, so I'm glad that it's finally here.
I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, maybe before we dive too far into the meat of what we're going to talk about today, can you tell us a little bit more about your background and how you got into the restaurant industry and doing what you're doing today?
Yeah, for sure. I took the side door or the back door, which is how I think most people in this industry get into this industry, at least in this country. I went to theater school. I came to New York with my theater degree. And what do you do when you're an out-of-work actor? You get a job in restaurants. And I did that for a long time. That was sort of the gig I would go back to in between theater gigs. And so I'd do a show and I'd come back and work at a restaurant and then go do a show and then come back and work at a restaurant. And after a while, I always joke around and said, after a while, my theater resume was pretty good. But I sort of looked backwards and my restaurant resume was unbelievable. When I was given the chance at 24 to open 2 Michelin star restaurants, back to back, I was sort of given opportunities that I probably shouldn't have been given. I think because I presented myself as capable and curious and interested. And at a certain point, I just said, okay, well, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna focus on this, and I haven't looked back since. So a ton of operational experience. Went back to school during the pandemic. Got my MBA, so I could sort of piece that side together, sort of balance out all the operational experience I had. And again, worked in restaurants, opened restaurants, ran restaurants. Would open it, run it, go to the next one. Open it, run it, go to the next one. And I did that for a long time until I switched over to consulting about 7-8 years ago. And then the pandemic forced me from consulting into coaching, which is sort of like another side of the same coin, which is really what I do now.
Amazing. It's funny. So I when I went to college, I was a music major. So I was a jazz studies and trombone performance major. And you'd never think, I never thought way back then, I'm going to end up working in restaurants and working with restaurant tech. But we find our way to the place where we can make a massive impact in the world. And that's fun to hear, from theater to Michelin star restaurants to operations and strategy and coaching.
And it's not that different. I mean, number one, there's this old quote, right? And it says, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect the dots. I think Steve Jobs said something to that effect years ago. So you can't put it together until but like, now I travel the world giving keynotes, right? That's my, all my background in storytelling and narrative and theater and, vocal production and speech. All of that allows me to do it. I've got a podcast where we put out 2 new episodes every single week. If I couldn't be an effective speaker and all of that, it's all that theater stuff coming back here. And also when we work in restaurants, we're either on stage or backstage, right? We're either customer facing, the stuff that the customers see that's part of the experience that we're trying to curate for them, or there's the frenzy in the back where, nobody knows what they're doing and we're just trying to put it together. It's the same thing. It's the same thing as theater as well. The other piece to it, honestly, and really where I clicked over is that, to make it personal, is that I'm a creative person. And at a certain point in the theater work, at least the jobs that I was getting, I was finding it wasn't very creative. Like I would do a show and then somebody would want me to do that show again. Then I'd do that same show, that same role again. I do that same over and over and over again. Meanwhile, in my restaurant career, I was working with some insanely creative people, obviously people who are very passionate, pushing boundaries and, sort of doing really cool things. So I realized that creativity piece was, there was some overlap in the Venn diagram of my life. It existed in both places.
I love that. And you highlight something that I've always loved about the restaurant industry it is hard to find people that are this passionate about what they do in other markets. And you'll have people who are passionate about what they're doing, but the concentration of passionate people is incredible in this industry. And that's one of the things that I've been attracted to
Sure.
over time. Now, just to set the stage for the audience so they really get a handle for what you do and how you go about it, tell us about what life is like for you as a coach. What are you doing for restaurants? How are you impacting the clients that work with you and the types of content that you're discussing and helping them work through?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I run something called the P3 Mastermind. It's a group coaching program for independent restaurant owners. For the most part, it's between, let's say, $1 and $6 million AUV. We do have a lot of multi-unit operators, but they're probably 8 units or less, 10 units or less. So just to give you a sense of sort of the kind of businesses I work with, we meet 2 hours every single week in Zoom, on a Zoom call. We're specifically focused on 2 things: profit first, right? Because profit is everything, and then growth. I'm the guy who says revenue does not cure all sins, or does not necessarily cure all sins. I think there are a lot of businesses that would be very, very profitable, very successful at their current business levels if they just learned how to manage their spending. And then once we know how to manage our spending, well, then we can grow the hell out of the business. But I don't want to grow it until we understand how the guardrails can protect us. So I work with a lot of people who run busy restaurants. They've been around for a while. Some of them are multi-generational, passed down, been around decades. They're doing a reasonable amount of revenue. They just can't be profitable, and they don't understand why. And so I just take the things that I've learned, either, working where I've worked, working for the people I've worked for, or through school. And I basically teach them a couple of simple systems to help them get this under control. Number 1, so that they understand how they can be profitable. Number 2, most importantly, so that they can teach their team what they need to do in order to be profitable. That's what I do. I work with, right now, we've got over 150 people enrolled in the program, spread across 4 different mastermind groups. So this is like a big thing. Like there's a big, and we've probably put 120 already through the program over the last 3.5 years. So program works. The impact we make is real, and most of that work can really be done on those 2-hour group coaching calls every single week.
I love that. Thank you for setting the stage there, because those 2 things go so hand in hand, but often you just focus on one or you just focus on the other. And we talk about this all the time in our business, where we focus on the growth side of the equation for my company. But we always say marketing isn't going to save your business. You have to have good business fundamentals, and then you can accelerate it, and then you can put fuel behind it. But marketing will either help you to accelerate or in a positive direction, or it's going to help you accelerate in a negative direction if you don't have the fundamentals right away.
I love it. So your business, though, is very, very different from the people that you serve in their business. Just like my business as a coach, as running this mastermind, is very different from the people that I coach. I have worked in restaurants, run restaurants for a long time, so I understand that. But yours, growth is the entire thing. And I think most of the restaurants that are out there are actually doing more revenue than they need. They're doing enough revenue, and they just don't know how to manage specifically prime cost, right? So prime cost, for everyone who doesn't know, is cost of goods plus labor. That's a number called prime. And 20 years ago, it didn't matter because rent was low, labor was low, product was relatively low. But as our consumer has become more discerning, they're interested in more quality products. That costs money. They have to be willing to pay for that. As minimum wages go up, as certain states get rid of the tip credit, all of this impacts what we have to charge the consumer. And I think somewhere along the line of the last 20, 25 years, we just didn't keep up. And I think it's because there's a lack of business knowledge, like you said. Now, this is to bring it all full circle. There's just some basic business fundamentals that we have to adhere to, right? We say, okay, my people really care, but we have really high quality ingredients. We do everything organic. Everything is local, et cetera, et cetera. Great. That comes with a price on it. So, well, my people aren't willing to pay. Well, then they don't really care about what you care about. So you can make a decision either way, but if they care about price, then they can't also, they meaning the consumer, can also care about the quality. If they care about the quality, then they're willing to pay for that, right? There's people who go out and buy a Toyota Camry. There's people who go out and buy a Mercedes. The people who understand enough about what you're getting under the hood in a Mercedes understand that they have to pay for that, right? When you go get an oil change for a BMW, it's a lot different cost than the oil change for a Toyota Camry. It just is what it is. And if you don't understand that, then you can't, then you haven't done a proper job marketing. And I think that's where key marketing, right? Really understanding your demographic are part of the fundamentals. I wrote about this in my book. It's the whole first part of the book, right? Which is that really understanding who has a problem that you can solve. And then how do you solve that better or in a more compelling way or in a different way than anything else out there? But if the people don't want something, there's no reason trying to talk them into having it. So you have to respond. All marketing, all business is about responding to the market and delivering something that's needed.
Yeah, I love that. That's a really great definition of marketing that I think gets lost in restaurants because we think of marketing as identifying people who have a problem, showcasing how you solve that problem, and getting their attention at the same time. But often when we talk about restaurants, it's hard to analyze what is the problem that my customers have. And is it a problem that I just think is there or that my customers actually have the problem? Maybe can you speak that in your book, I think you talk through like the ABCDs of marketing, and that kind of ties some of these things that we're talking about together. Can you speak to that a little bit and, open that to the audience here?
Yeah.
What is that?
So there's a very specific way that I think about marketing, right? So there are three sort of frameworks that I force upon all of the clients I work with. I think marketing is simpler than a lot of people make it out to be. And I think it's probably because they can sell products based on confusion or overwhelm or whatever, but it's really simple. And I think if as operators or restaurant owners, we can just simplify it, then we have a helpful lens with which to view anything that's being pitched at us. Number one is the definition for marketing. Marketing is very, very simple. You figure out what's the product, who's that product for, and then you figure out how to reach them. It's exactly what you said, but we boil it down to those three questions. That ends up being crucial. The next framework, right? So that's the framework for what is marketing and how we do it. A simpler framework, and I've been saying this a lot recently, marketing is just two things: getting people to raise their hand and getting people to follow you, right? So you walk into a busy room and say, hey, let me see a show of hands. Who likes tacos? A handful of hands go up. You say, great, everybody raise their hands, follow me. That's marketing. You figure out who likes what you have or who wants what you have or who needs what you have, who has the problem that you solve. You identify them and then just get them to follow you. That's it. No matter what we're trying to do, that's what it comes down to, right? That leads to this framework, the ABCDs of marketing. And you're exactly right. I started off the book, and this is like the foundational piece. What happens is when we talk about marketing, we almost immediately start talking about Facebook and Instagram. We start talking about TikTok. We start talking about email. We start talking about the tools that we have at our disposal, but we haven't really talked about marketing yet. The foundational piece, right, and the ABCDs of marketing is really a framework for thinking about product market fit and what we call positioning, right? So it's a way of talking about marketing without using any of sort of the terms that were coined 50, 60 years ago, right? So ABCD stands for audience, brand, competition, and differentiation. Right? So we start with audience because audience is the most important part. It's exactly what we're talking about. You figure out who has a problem that you're uniquely qualified to solve. That's your audience, right? So it's either a type of person, a group of people, a specific person, but you figure out your audience, right? So if your population is everybody in a given market, you can't market to everybody, right? There's plenty of people who don't like what you have, can't afford what you have, can't easily get to you to have what you have. So, okay, so we start stripping down, right? That's how we start segmenting the audience. We come up with the people who need what we have, right? People who need something. your brand, right, is your product. Your brand provides a product, a service, an experience, right? And that is the answer to someone's prayers. It is the solution to the problem. So that's A, B. C, competition. It's a new way of thinking about our competitors. You figure out who's trying to solve the same problem you are. So if you look around and say, hey, there really aren't that many nice restaurants here in the market. First thing you have to ask is there a reason for that? Can people not afford nice restaurants? Does this community not like dressing up? Do they have no need to go out? Do they celebrate in different ways, right? In New York City, people go out to celebrate birthdays and anniversaries and graduations and closing dinners and, promotions. And that's why there's so many restaurants. There's so many people celebrating so many things, and there's so many great restaurants to be a part of that. But in other markets, maybe not so much. So you figure out if there is the problem that you think, and then you solve the problem, and then you figure out who else is solving the same problem you are. That gives you a category, right? Category is a really helpful thing because as a restaurant owner, we're not competing against all of the restaurants in a given market. We're just competing with what's called a consideration set, right? So if I say, hey, babe, I don't want to cook tonight. What do you want to get for dinner? My wife says, maybe sushi. And I say, yeah, great. Immediately, we've taken tacos off the table, Greek food, Chinese food, pizza, Italian, all of that. It's just sushi. So we say, okay, what's the next question? The next natural question is, I don't know, where do you want to get from? Right? And then suddenly there's the 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 sushi places within a certain radius, right? In the episode I'm describing, it's late in the day. My wife and I are both working late. We're both tired. My kid's getting hungry. So we need something quick. We need something good and quick. So that starts narrowing down our parameters. Your competitors are the people trying to solve that same problem, right? And certain restaurants might, right? So sushi restaurant might compete with all the other sushi restaurants. Sushi restaurant might also be competing with the other 6 restaurants in a given block or in a shopping center because people are going like, well, I got to take my kid to dance and then let's just get something to eat right afterwards. Well, suddenly you're competing against the 4 or 5 restaurants that are in that shopping center. So in a certain situation, your competitors are different. It's really important to understand who you're competing with in what instances. And of course, all of that gets us to differentiation, which is the most important piece to it, right? If you're in a category, if you're in a group of other restaurants that are being considered when you're being considered, you got to figure out how you separate yourself from that group. You can be the closest. You could be the cheapest. You could be the most unique, the most adventurous, whatever it is. You have to have a perspective. If you don't, people have nothing with which to make a decision. I always call that the commodity problem, right? Commodity product, right? A commodity by definition says when a consumer is faced with similar products, right? All things being equal, they'll make the decision based on one of 3 criteria. Familiarity, convenience, or price. And for all of us playing at this level, that's a death knell. We will die if we're trying to compete. We're never going to be the most famous. We're never going to be the closest. We're never going to be the cheapest. It's a race to the bottom. We're never going to beat Outback. We're never going to beat Applebee's or Five Guys or Shake Shack or McDonald's or you name the brand. You're never going to beat them. So don't try. So you have to figure out something else. A, B, C, D, right? D is that differentiation, and it leads to E, and E stands for everything, which basically says everything you do matters. You can be overwhelmed by that, or you can be empowered by that. I choose to be empowered by that. Is that every choice you make, everything you do, every the prices on your menu, the food you serve, the way you plate that, the way you greet the table, the way you say goodbye to the table, all of that says something to a prospective diner about what they can expect there, which goes all the way back to the beginning. Who needs something? How do you communicate to them that you got the thing they're looking for? There's so many opportunities to do it. That's a really important framework. That's like table stakes. That's a foundation that you build a business upon. With the answers to those questions, then you figure out which tools you use, right? Which social media platforms and in which way, right? Google, TikTok, email, text, on and on, right? Texting is perfect for some restaurants and I think challenging for other restaurants. Not saying there isn't a place for it, but there's a way we use a tool in one kind of restaurant as opposed to another one. And it's the same with any of the tools we have available.
Certainly. And you talk about how differentiation becomes one of the most important pieces to that equation. I also think it is the one that is often most left out.
100%.
Because it is a difficult thing to think about and to really craft. How are we different? You used the tacos example. There is a taco place in our area, Smoked Taco, and they have done this really well. They are not your just like basic taco. They are a premium taco, and their price point showcases that as well. They've been able to identify who are the true people who will buy a premium taco, and we're not going to be the Taco Bell. We're not going to be the street food truck that comes up. You're going to come and you're going to have, a taco that has all the trimmings, it's going to be a beefy taco. It's not just pull this thing over and chomp on it. But their marketing showcases that, and they showcase what is different about them. And that's going to attract some people and it's going to turn off the others. And they are completely fine with that because they want that specific audience that wants the premium taco.
It's that old thing, right? You can't be all things to all people. Yep. One of the things I say in the book is oftentimes you figure out who your audience is by first figuring out who your audience isn't, right?
I love that.
In the example that I was given, right? So if I open this sports bar, right? So I give the example in the book. I open this sort of upscale sports bar in Brooklyn. Immediately, right? Anybody who doesn't like sports or loud environments and all that, they're not going to like it. Anybody who lives in any of the other boroughs, they're not going to travel an hour and a half to get from the Bronx down to Brooklyn, right? That's like 2 trains and an hour and a half on the train. They're not going to do it. It's not worth traveling that far, right? It's people who don't eat meat. There's people who don't like sports. There's people who can't afford it or don't see the value of spending their money in that way. They'll spend their money in other ways, but not that way. You narrow down, and I think you have to make choices, and it's counterintuitive, right? So I always ask people, right? I ask restaurant owners, who's your restaurant for? And they always say, everyone, which is not true. What they mean is, I think we could take care of anyone who walks in here. I think everyone would have a great time here. We will make sure of it. And I think that's probably right? Like that's our job. Once we're faced with customers, we have to make their night. But the restaurant is not for everyone. I always give this example. I was helping to open a Greek steakhouse, and I was just helping them do their marketing. And it was dark. It was energetic. It was sort of clubby. It had loud music. It was sexy. And we sat there one night with the owner, and I got in this like argument with them. And he said, "But it is for everyone. It is. And he was so adamant. I said, well, look at it from my perspective. And he had his back to I was sitting against the window. He was looking at me, and I was looking at the restaurant. I said, there's an older couple right over there. I said, look at them. Look at them. And he said, okay. So now look at over there. There's 6 ladies in the corner. 6 ladies were dressed up. They were ready for a night out. They were having fun, taking pictures of themselves, of all the food, of this and that. And then the old people were, sort of craning close to each other so they could hear each other. I said, I hope they're enjoying the food, but I don't think they're enjoying this experience. This restaurant is not for them. And you know what they're going to say when they leave? So, well, we gave, and he was getting flippant about it. They said, no, they're going to tell their friends, don't go there. You're really not going to like it. It's loud. It's dark. It's just, it's for younger people. I said, and they're not wrong. Our marketing just has to get to them before they come in the front door, because now they're saying it. We want to tell people, if you're looking for X, Y, and Z, that's not us. And there are plenty of other places that will provide that, but that's not us. We're for them. We're for those ladies. We're young, we're hip, we're energized, we're loud, we're sexy. And if you're looking for something else, then don't come here. Because now when this older couple goes and tells their friends, it's going to be tinged with something else. So that's a failure in your marketing. And that's what we're talking about. And that's what we're going to get right. We want more of them, because they're going to have a better time. They're going to spend more money. They're going to tell more people, which is going to get more people like them in here. And that's the place you've built. Whether you like it or not, whether you realized it or not, you built a place for them. And it was like, and I watched it like wash all over him. And it was like, it's just something as simple as that.
The ABCDs really are the fundamentals of what is my story, who wants that story. And then, we get to, some people would call it the fun part of, now I get to actually communicate this to the audience that I've crafted, and I'm highlighting what is so special about this that's going to draw them in? What are some of the things that you've been seeing in the market from like a communication strategy perspective? What ways are people getting that message out to their audience in ways that are really moving the needle for them?
Yeah. I have no idea. It changes at the speed of light. I mean, everything, the things we did 5 years ago and 10 years ago are totally outdated. What I will say is that the third framework that I mentioned earlier is probably worth mentioning here. In the book, I talk about something called the triangle principle. For me, again, this becomes a helpful lens with which to view what you're really asking me, which we'll get to. The only things we have to do to successfully market our restaurants, we only have to do three things. That's why we call it the triangle principle. We got to focus on customer acquisition. So we need to raise awareness, build trust, and convince new people who've never been with us to try us out. That's a whole set of tasks. That's a thing we have to accomplish. Yep. Number two is customer retention, right? So how do we identify those first timers to get them back? And how do we get all our people to come back with greater frequency, right? Customer retention is the other pillar that we have to focus on. It's the second side of the triangle. And the third one is what I call evangelism, right? And evangelism really has to do with word of mouth. And if we say word of mouth is as powerful as it is, and I say that tongue in cheek because I think we all know it is very powerful, but if it's as powerful as that, then we need a strategy for it, right? There are things we can do to make that happen, right? And I always ask people, I say, what's your plan for word of mouth? And they always look at me, they're like, well, that's not how word of mouth works. I mean, they come in, they have a good time. We should have them, feed them good food and show them good service. And then they go tell people. I'm like, yes, I know what word of mouth is, but how do you make that happen, right? If we know online reviews are powerful, what are you doing to get more online reviews, more 5-star rave reviews? If you know that user-generated content, having people take pictures and videos and post about you, then what are you doing to make that happen, right? Whether that's sexy dishes that just people can't help but take pictures of, all of that, right? So we need a customer acquisition plan, a retention plan, and what I call an evangelism plan. Now, suddenly, every tool you look at is helping you accomplish one of those three goals. And if it doesn't help you do one of those three, you don't need it, right? And this is this idea of systems and goals. For me, for customer acquisition, I think Google search ads and meta ads are table stakes. I think there's no better way. I think people go to look for things, go to search for things on Google. So you want to make sure you're found there. And I think the targeting on Meta makes it the most sophisticated advertising platform ever created. Why we wouldn't spend a couple $100 on those two platforms is beyond me. That's table stakes. If you want to figure out how to get new people in the front door, that's it, right? For customer retention, I think email marketing is absolutely crucial. It continues to be the preferred mode of communication between a consumer and the brands that they support. I'm really all for a targeted use of text messaging because it works. The open rates are through the roof and it can drive specific action better than just about anything else. So those are there. I'm also a big proponent of bounce backs, of just analog in the moment, identifying first-time diners and shoving something in their hand that will get them back after you have a meaningful, lovely conversation. Hey, how you doing? My name is Chip. I'm the manager here. I hate to interrupt, but I just wanted to introduce myself. I understand it's your first time here. Is that right? Amazing. Do you guys live in the area? Are you new to the area? What made you come in tonight? How'd you hear about us? What do you guys get? What did you guys like tonight? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
And talk about what an experience that is when
think
you
of all the
scene.
And think of all the hollow table touches.
Yep.
Hey, folks, I just want to make sure everyone enjoying everything here. Yeah, everything's good. Perfect. And then they walk away. That's an interruption that accomplished nothing. If you're going to inject yourself into a tables conversation, man, it better be worth it. And so at the end of them, when you give them like a $10 off card or a $20 off card, like then you've made it where that, hey, folks, sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to introduce myself. My name's Chip. I'm the manager here. I understand it's your first time here. And then you have a minute-long conversation and you make it worth their while by giving them something, by putting something in their hand that's cash that's going to burn a hole in their pocket that will get them back. That's like a no-brainer. 70% of first-time diners never return to a restaurant. So if we can just fix that number, it changes the whole thing. And then for evangelism, I think we need a steady way to get 5-star rave reviews. And I think we need to think about what we serve, how we plate it, how we serve it. so that we can get more user-generated content. If that's the way that people hear about things, see things. My wife just landed in Singapore. She already posted this morning a handful of photos. Boom. Now people know about Singapore. Oh my God, is it really that beautiful? Is it really great? Where did you go? Where was that speakeasy went? Oh my God, which night market did you go to? Et cetera, et cetera. Right? Now people are talking about Singapore in her, the 100 people who saw her post this morning. That's how we make restaurants relevant.
Yeah, I think that is so crucial. And I think that triangle of acquisition, retention, and evangelism is important to break it out when you decide what are the strategies that I'm employing. Because people try to use one tool as a blunt instrument across these.
Well, there's a perfect example, right? So organic social media. Organic social media has a reach of about 3 to 5%. So generously, 5% of your people just saw the picture of the burger that you spent so long to post. 5%. Now you do the math. You got 1,000 people. Not a lot of people saw it. And you can't even control whether the people that saw it are in your market, meaning could they even come in for dinner sometime this week? You talk about the blunt instrument, right? Like what is that accomplishing? I think we have to maintain a social media presence simply so that because it's part of the customer journey. Somebody, oh my God, we went to this restaurant last night. Oh, really? Well, let me go check it out. And then they go check out Instagram. Yep. I think of it like a lookbook. Like I think that's important to have, but for that to be your entire strategy is stupid. And that's the difference, 15 years later, that platform is more sophisticated. Facebook's more sophisticated. It's an ad platform. It's an advertising platform. So if we're not using the tools, we're missing the whole point of it as business owners. Certainly.
Chip, this has been so helpful. There are extremely tactical things that anyone who listens to this today can go and do. They can really think about how am I different? Who is my audience? How do I acquire a customer and what tools could I use versus I'm trying to retain my customers and get them, my first timers coming back and telling a story and sharing my product. These are very, very tactical. Thank you so much. And this, I think, gives a window into what you do and how you help restaurants. How can people learn more about you and what you do after hearing this content today?
Yeah, I appreciate it. So you can check me out on Instagram. It's @RestaurantStrategy, TikTok @RestaurantStrategy. If you go to Instagram @RestaurantStrategy and you want a free copy of the book, it's called The Restaurant Marketing Mindset. You can go and send us a DM, literally DM the word book, BOOK. That's it. There's an automation setup that will send you the link to get it for free. You just have to pay for shipping. It's available to anybody in the United States. We send out signed copies of the book. You also get a free month of our Foundations program, which is basically our community. It's regularly $97 a month. So at the end of the month, it'll start charging $97 for you to stay in the community. But by all means, get in there and take advantage of it for free. There's resources, there's a whole bundle. Download all the freebies, swipe them, steal them. And the content in the online community is really meant to be a complement to the insights and the ideas in the book, which is why we make them sort of a 1-2 punch. So you can get the book for free by going to @RestaurantStrategy on Instagram and just DM us the word book.
Wonderful. I think you'll have plenty of people who are looking for these types of things and we'll hit you up. So Instagram @RestaurantStrategy. Chip, thank you so much for coming and sharing your knowledge and expertise and what you've experienced with your restaurant clients. So thank you for coming today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Restaurant Rocket Fuel. And thank you to the amazing restaurateurs that work so hard to provide an amazing guest experience for our communities. Again, this podcast is sponsored by Boostly. To see how we can drive more revenue to your business, visit boostly.com. Don't forget to subscribe and go out there and maximize the potential that you and your business have in front of you.